the early 1940s, a tyrannical power using fake news, hate speech, military might and hegemonic power controlled most of Europe. The Nazis. They controlled public life, news and local economies. Resistance groups dotted the European mainland, with one lifeline for non-official communication from free countries: radio. Then radios were contraband and confiscated. The Great Firewall of China controls and regulates the internet in China. Iran, Syria, and Vietnam also control significant portions of the internet for their populations. Recently, Russia introduced technology to wall off its internal networks, servers, and internet users from the wider internet. In its attempt to control unrest following its anti-Muslim citizenship law and the lifting of the special status of Jammu and Kashmir, India had employed a particularly heavy-handed approach, simply blocking the internet entirely, which is a norm in almost all of the third world countries. Another country, United Arab Emirates, took a different approach, outlawing all messengers except one that it built. However it happens, it allows governments to control what people see, read, and hear from outside sources, and censor what their own people say. Starlink can change all of that. Since the World Wide Web was made available to the public in 1991, high-speed internet has been delivered through cables. In 2003, a new type of internet, wireless internet, was introduced that beamed the internet down from satellites orbiting the Earth at a height of 37,000 kilometers. Owing to this long distance the data needs to travel, satellite internet connection has significant latency or lag. Starlink promises to address this issue by placing satellites in the low Earth orbit at 328 to 580 kilometers above sea level. That is up to 111 times closer than the old satellites. Starlink also wants to cover the entire world with a constellation of 42,000 satellites. Once the constellation is completed, anyone will be able to access the internet from any part of the world. The development of the Starlink network began in 2015, with the first prototype satellites launched into orbit in 2018. The satellites are strapped onto the top of SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket and blasted into orbit, usually releasing 60 satellites per launch. In 2021, SpaceX launched over 200 Starlink satellites into orbit from Kennedy Space Center. Now it has 1737 working satellites and nearly 100,000 users across 12 countries, with more than 500,000 pre-orders. The list of countries currently serviced by the growing network includes the US, Canada, the UK, France, Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, Belgium, Ireland, Switzerland, Denmark, Portugal, Australia and New Zealand. The cost of Starlink internet service is currently billed at $99 per month, plus taxes and fees. The initial payment for the mountable satellite dish and router is $500. However, the cost is expected to drop significantly with more orders. As for the internet speed, according to Starlink website, users can expect to see data speeds vary from 50 to 150 megabits per second, and latency from 20 to 40 milliseconds in most locations. This is much faster than what most third world countries have right now. A list compiled by Reddit Starlink communities shows the fastest download speed so far was 209.17 megabits per second, recorded in New York. One person in Utah recorded in December their speed test showing 215 megabits per second. Starlink has even reached speeds of 175 megabits per second in freezing temperatures, high winds and snow. Members of the scientific community, especially astronomers, however, have raised concerns about the impact of Starlink's low Earth orbit satellites on night sky visibility, as the satellite bodies reflect sunlight to Earth. Researchers and stargazers are afraid that a Starlink network with as many as 42,000 spacecraft might ruin dark skies everywhere. To address this issue, Starlink satellites are now attaching a sunshade to them that reduces the sunlight reflected to observers on the ground. In April 2021, the U.S. Federal Communications Commission approved a modification that SpaceX had made to the design of its Starlink mega constellation, which moves the operating altitude for the future Starlink satellites much lower, from between 1,100 to 1,300 kilometers to around 550 kilometers. But two other major players in the satellite communications field, Dish Network Corporation and Viasat, filed appeals with the United States Court of Appeals, asking that the approval order be deemed unlawful and set aside. The Federal Appeals Court, however, ruled that SpaceX can keep launching broadband satellites. Starlink service now boasts more than 100,000 satellite terminals shipped to customers. The coverage map will continue to grow as more satellites make their way into the constellation. Eventually, Starlink hopes to blanket the entire planet in a usable, high-speed Wi-Fi signal. What that means is that anyone can access the internet from anywhere. Chinese citizens will be able to access Google and information about Tiananmen Square. Russian citizens will be able to see external analysis of Putin's financial dealings, even if Russia blocks outside sources. Indian protesters can be cut off from the internet. Of course, authoritarian governments will try to make the Starlink terminal illegal. But that in itself will be a victory for the satellite internet, and a defeat for the tyrannical governments. Isn't it?